You actually did not go away. I mean, you were there enjoying the party like everyone else.
Ted, are you suggesting that I chip in?
Well...
How much?
5.
There's a photo from the Mary Tyler Moore Show that nobody was supposed to see. It happened during filming in 1973. The cameras kept rolling when they shouldn't have. What they captured changed everything we thought we knew about the cast. Mary Tyler Moore tried to have it destroyed. Ed Asner said it was too revealing. But one copy survived. When you see what's really in the background, you'll understand why CBS wanted it buried. The truth about that newsroom was hiding in plain sight all along. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, television was mostly built around actors. The big names were the stars, and most people thought that was all that mattered. Grant Tinker decided to do things differently. In 1969, he started MTM Enterprises with Mary Tyler Moore. From the very beginning, he believed television should be a writer's medium. Tinker thought the best shows would come from great writers, so he gave them freedom and protected them from too much interference. He liked to say, "My job was simply to get my hands on the best creative people, help them however they needed, and then let them do their thing." That was not the way most people ran TV companies back then. This was a bold idea, and it paid off. Writers like James L. Brooks and Alan Burns created The Mary Tyler Moore Show. The company kept making hits and won 29 Emmy Awards just for The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Writers and producers working under Tinker felt respected and safe, and they created characters and stories that changed television forever. Many of today's most famous showrunners still say they learned their craft under Tinker. It changed the balance of power in Hollywood and proved that the person at the typewriter could matter as much as the star on the screen. When the Mary Tyler Moore Show was being developed in 1970, the creators had a surprising idea. They thought Mary Richards, played by Mary Tyler Moore, should be a 30-year-old divorcee starting over. This was a big deal at the time. Divorce was rarely seen on TV, and network executives were scared of putting a divorced woman at the center of a comedy. One CBS executive even said, "The audience will think she divorced Dick Van Dyke," referring to Moore's character's husband on The Dick Van Dyke Show. Network research teams went further and claimed that American viewers would never accept a divorcee, or even people with mustaches or Jews, as lead characters. After test audiences rejected the idea of a divorced Mary, the team decided she would simply be a single woman who had left a long engagement. Even this was new for television and gave viewers a modern version of a working woman with her own life. James L. Brooks and Alan Burns also chose a newsroom as the setting for the show. That was not a coincidence. Both men had worked in TV and knew how a newsroom really felt. Brooks had even been a journalist and a story editor before moving into comedy. They decided that putting Mary in a newsroom would give the show real energy. The deadline pressure, the funny personalities, and the friendships were all part of that world. It was different from the usual family sitcoms at the time. The newsroom felt alive. It let them talk about things like gender equality and friendship at work, which was rare on TV then. That real-life feel is one reason people connected with the show. By the late 1960s, Mary Tyler Moore was famous as Laura Petrie on The Dick Van Dyke Show. After that show ended in 1966, she tried Broadway and movies. Some of those projects failed, like Holly Golightly, which closed before it even opened. That scared her. When CBS called her in 1969 about a new show, she was hesitant. She worried she would never top Laura Petrie. But she agreed to do the show if she and Grant Tinker had control. That led to the creation of MTM Enterprises. It gave Moore and Tinker freedom to do the kind of show they believed in. That freedom changed television. MTM was built to support writers and creative people at every level. Tinker hired the best talent, kept the network at bay, and let the team take risks. The company's logo of a meowing kitten became famous because it meant a show was going to be smart and well-made. MTM created hits like The Bob Newhart Show, Rhoda, Lou Grant, WKRP in Cincinnati, Hill Street Blues, and St. Elsewhere. By the time Tinker left MTM in 1981, those shows had won dozens of Emmys and changed what people thought television could do. The Mary Tyler Moore Show premiered on September 19, 1970. It introduced America to a single working woman who was not chasing a husband. That was unheard of then. Mary was an associate producer at a Minneapolis TV station. She had ended an engagement and moved on. Instead of looking for a man to complete her life, she built a career and had friendships. The show was also honest enough to hint that Mary dated and had her own life outside of work. That honesty and respect for women was new to television. Audiences loved it right away. In its first year, The Mary Tyler Moore Show was number 22 in the Nielsen ratings with a 20.3 rating. By its second season, it was in the top 10 with a 23.7 rating, and by its third season it hit number 7 with a 23.6 rating. That success lasted 3 years. Viewers tuned in every week. It became one of the most popular shows of the decade. Awards followed. The show won 29 Emmy Awards across 7 years, with 82 nominations total. It took home the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series 3 years in a row, 1975, 1976, and 1977. Mary Tyler Moore won 3 times for lead actress, and other actors like Ed Asner and Betty White also won. Critics and fans agreed that it was one of the best shows ever made. The show also broke new ground with its content. In one episode, Mary comes home the morning after spending the night with a man. A few episodes later, her mother casually reminds her to take her pill. That was a first for TV. It told viewers that Mary was an adult who made her own choices. Many people were shocked. Some stations even thought about pulling the episodes, but the show never preached. It simply showed Mary as a normal, modern woman. By the end of its run in 1977, The Mary Tyler Moore Show had won a Peabody Award. The committee praised it as the benchmark by which all situation comedies must be judged. That was a perfect summary of what the show had achieved. It proved that a comedy about a single working woman could be smart, funny, and real. It changed television forever. There was also a funny side to Mary's famous show that nobody expected. Boom microphones often appeared at the top of the frame in the newsroom shots. It happened a lot, and fans began to look for them. The show was shot on a big set, so keeping the microphone out of view was hard. Instead of ruining the show, these mistakes became part of its charm. And then there were camera crews and lighting rigs often showing up in the background. With the big newsroom set, it was hard to hide everything. Even cables and camera operators slipped into view. Editing back then wasn't like today. The mistakes stayed in the final broadcasts. Fans now look back at them and smile. Lou Grant's office had its own little secret. Next to his door, 2 painted hinges showed up on the wall. These weren't decoration. They were there so the set could fold and move quickly between scenes. Lou's desk was even on wheels so it could roll in and out. Everything was built for speed. This was common in sitcoms filmed in front of live audiences. The crew was very clever. And then there were the newsroom clocks. They were meant to look like a real station with times from around the world. But none of them moved. Every episode had them frozen in place. It was a cheap and easy way to look real without worrying about changing the time. Fans caught the error, and it became part of the show's story. Even stranger was seeing 2 clocks for Minneapolis and Chicago, 2 cities in the same time zone. Sometimes one clock was even set an hour ahead of the other. It didn't make sense for a small local station to show both. The set designers were copying what they thought a big newsroom would do. But on this show, it became one of those perfect mistakes that people still remember. One of the most surprising mistakes in the Mary Tyler Moore Show comes from Lou Grant's strange memory of Mary Richards' job interview. In a later episode, Lou laughs as he tells people that Mary was so nervous she bumped into his desk and said, "Excuse me," to it. It's a funny image, and it feels like something that could happen. But if you go back to the very first episode from 1970, none of that happens at all. Mary never bumps into Lou's desk, and she never apologizes to a piece of furniture. The real interview is just Lou being blunt, and Mary answering politely. That little story Lou tells? It was made up long after. What's so strange is that everyone involved in the show seemed to forget that millions of people had already seen the original scene. It's a huge mix-up for a show that usually kept its details so sharp. There's another odd mistake about that same interview. Lou later claims he decided to hire Mary because she was embarrassed about a run in her pantyhose. It's a small, sweet touch that's meant to show how real and vulnerable she was. But in the pilot episode, Mary isn't even wearing pantyhose. She's in knee socks. There's no run and no awkward moment. That story was completely invented after the fact, creating a false reason for why Lou hired her. It feels strange because this show was famous for making its characters feel real. This invented pantyhose scene never happened, and anyone who looks closely will see the disconnect. And then there's the dinner scene between Mary and Rhoda. They're having a meal together at Mary's apartment, talking like close friends. Rhoda is clearly seen with a plate and a glass of water in front of her. The camera switches to Mary and then back to Rhoda. Nothing much changes in their conversation. But somehow, Rhoda's plate and glass have disappeared, and she's suddenly holding a coffee cup. Nobody walked in to clear the table. It's like the props vanished into thin air. It's a tiny error, but one that feels big because it breaks the real-time feeling of the scene. Even for viewers who weren't looking too closely, the change feels strange and distracting. There's also a famous mistake when the WJM team meets at a restaurant in Minneapolis. The outside shot clearly shows palm trees, which you'd never see in Minnesota. Even worse, there's the big sign for the Sheraton Universal Hotel, a famous Los Angeles hotel, in the background. For a show that was so proud of its Minneapolis setting, this is a glaring mistake. It reminds everyone watching that most of the filming was really in California, and the crew didn't hide it very well. The sight of palm trees in what's supposed to be a chilly Midwestern city is funny, but it breaks the spell of the show's world. And then there's the way they show the WJM office. The show often tries to make you believe the newsroom is on one of the top floors of a big building. But when you look out the windows, you can see treetops and the top of a church dome. That would only make sense if they were on a much lower floor. The angles don't add up at all. It's one of those details most people might not notice at first, but once you do, it feels impossible to ignore. It's a strange oversight for a show that usually cared so much about the realism of its characters and their world. Gloria Steinem was never one to hold back. One of the most fascinating criticisms of the Mary Tyler Moore Show came from her. She thought it was strange that Mary Richards always called her boss Mr. Grant, even though her male colleagues called him Lou. This wasn't just a tiny detail to Steinem. It showed that women, even strong women like Mary, were still seen as outsiders in a man's world. In the early 1970s, names and titles weren't just polite habits. They were signs of who had power. Steinem believed that making Mary use Mr. Grant, while the men could call him Lou, kept that old hierarchy alive. At public events, people applauded her criticism. Even James L. Brooks, the co-creator, was surprised at the strong reaction. Later, he admitted it made him see that small things on screen could spark big debates about women's role at work. That debate was one of many. Mary was a strange mix of modern and traditional. She was single, focused on her career, and doing things most female characters hadn't done before. But she was also kind, gentle, and careful not to make anyone too uncomfortable. Some people thought this was exactly the problem. Feminist scholars like Bonnie Dow and Amanda Lotz called Mary's character a compromised and contradictory feminism. They said the show's producers wanted her to seem independent enough to be inspiring, but not too independent, or they'd lose the audience. Mary was the girl next door, someone who smiled and made the best of things instead of fighting too loudly. That made the show feel real to a lot of women. But it also frustrated people who hoped television could do more than gently suggest change. TV Guide even ran an editorial complaining that Mary wasn't pushing the boundaries enough. The magazine argued that she never challenged traditional family life or male authority, at least not directly. Even though she was independent, she still kept the comforting qualities of a good girl: sweetness, humility, a desire for stability. That complaint hinted at a big question in the 1970s. How far could a television show go without making people angry? Some defended the show for moving slowly, saying that was how you change minds. Others thought the show had missed a chance to do something braver. That tension showed up again in one of the most memorable episodes. In the Season 3 premiere, called The Good Time News, Mary learns that her male predecessor earned $50 more per week than she did. It aired in September 1972, when equal pay was becoming a real political issue. Mary confronts her boss Lou about it, but her voice shakes. She stumbles over her words. That nervousness became a controversy too. Some women's rights activists thought the scene was too timid. To them, Mary sounded too scared to fight. Others thought it was exactly right. That shaky voice was what most women really felt when they had to stand up for themselves. Either way, the episode was a breakthrough. It brought a serious issue into America's living rooms and showed just how messy and personal the fight for fairness could be. The show kept pushing at the edge of what people were comfortable with. In one episode, Mary comes home the next morning still in the dress she wore on her date. Nothing was spelled out. But everyone watching knew what it meant. That small, quiet choice caused a flood of angry letters from male viewers. Many of them said they were shocked and disappointed. They thought Mary was a good girl, and they didn't want her image spoiled. The fact that they reacted so strongly to one dress showed how much people still expected women to fit into neat, innocent boxes. At the same time, it revealed a deep double standard. Men could do the same thing on television, and nobody would care. But a single woman's sexuality was still seen as a threat. Ed Asner was loved as Lou Grant on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, but off-screen, he fought battles most actors never face. In the early 1980s, as president of the Screen Actors Guild, he took a brave stand. He spoke out against U.S. policies in Central America and especially against President Reagan's support of El Salvador's government during its civil war. In 1982, he raised $1 million for medical supplies for rebel forces. This angered powerful conservatives. Reagan himself took notice. Groups called for a boycott of his hit show Lou Grant, urging sponsors to drop out and viewers to turn the channel. Threats came in, and security had to protect Asner and his family. That same year, despite strong ratings, CBS canceled Lou Grant. Many, including Asner, felt this was a political retaliation, like a secret blacklist. Offers stopped coming. Producers didn't want to touch him. "I was sorry to get the show canceled," he later said, "but I'm not sorry I took a stand." Even for a respected star, Hollywood had limits. Speak too loudly, and doors can close forever. Valerie Harper's story was different, but equally harsh. Famous as Rhoda Morgenstern, she won 4 Emmys and a Golden Globe on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and its spin-off Rhoda. Yet, at her death in 2019, her fortune was only $1 million. That's a modest amount for someone so celebrated. A lawsuit in the late 1980s had damaged her career. Fired from her own sitcom, Valerie, later renamed The Hogan Family, she sued Lorimar Productions. The jury awarded her $1.63 million in damages and a share of the show's profits. But the long fight brought bad publicity. Rumors spread that she was difficult, and some thought she was blacklisted. Roles became harder to find. Then, illness struck. Diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in 2013, she faced huge medical bills. Her family even started a GoFundMe to pay for her care. It was a sad reality for someone who had been a household name. Harper's struggle showed that fame and awards don't guarantee security. Ted Knight took a different path. Born Tadeusz Władysław Konopka in 1923, he left school to serve in World War II. After earning 5 campaign stars as a combat engineer, he came home and spent decades in small jobs, as a puppeteer, radio host, and children's show MC. Fame finally found him nearly age 50 with The Mary Tyler Moore Show, where he played Ted Baxter, the clueless anchor man. Knight embraced the part and turned it into success. By the time he died in 1986, his fortune was estimated at $10 million. That money didn't come only from Lou Grant. Knight had his own hit show, Too Close for Comfort. He voiced animated characters on Super Friends and appeared in movies like Caddyshack. Knight also invested well. In 1981, he bought a house in Pacific Palisades for $985,000. His widow sold it later for more than $2 million. Knight's life proves that even a long shot can make it big, if they stick with it. The cast had real bonds off-screen too. Ed Asner and Mary Tyler Moore, often at odds as Lou and Mary, became close friends in real life. After both were single, they even went on a date once, just like an episode where Lou and Mary tried dating before deciding to stay friends. Ed and Ted Knight fought sometimes, especially after the show ended, but they patched things up before Knight died. Gavin MacLeod and Cloris Leachman weren't close at first, but they became friends after years of working together. They all fought for Mary's attention at times and played pranks on each other. Rumors of romance swirled, but most of their chemistry was real friendship. Yet not everything was perfect. Mary Tyler Moore was often kind and warm on screen, but she ran the show with a firm hand. Colleagues remembered her as a perfectionist who gave her opinion on everything. Even her wardrobe was under her control, as it had been back on the Dick Van Dyke Show when she fought to wear pants instead of dresses. Some on set called her difficult. She rarely raised her voice, but she was driven and private. She kept her personal battles, like diabetes and depression, hidden, determined to keep the show strong. Her real-life struggles make her story more human and show that the warm smile everyone loved came with hard work and tough choices. That courage and honesty shaped The Mary Tyler Moore Show. In February 1972, they aired Some of My Best Friends Are Rhoda, which took on anti-Semitism. Mary befriends a woman named Joanne after a fender bender, but Joanne starts leaving Rhoda out of their plans. Rhoda is Jewish, and Joanne hints that Rhoda isn't the right type for her club. When Mary presses her, Joanne says it's just the rules. Mary pretends to be Jewish too and walks away, never telling Rhoda what happened. The scene was powerful for what it left unsaid. It showed prejudice could hide behind polite words, and they weren't scared of sexuality either. An early episode showed Mary coming home in the morning light in last night's dress. Even more shocking was the famous line, "Don't forget to take your pill," which Mary and her father answered together, "I won't." The simple joke was bold at a time when women's sexual freedom was hardly ever shown on TV. Then there was Phyllis's brother Ben, introduced in 1973. Everyone thought he'd be perfect for Mary. Instead, he hits it off with Rhoda. Phyllis panics. Finally, Rhoda says flat out, "He's gay," breaking ground for its time. The show didn't make him a joke or a villain. It treated him like anyone else. And they tackled sexism too. An episode showed Mary earning $50 less than a man for the same work. Lou Grant told her it was because the guy had a family. Mary didn't back down. "That's not a good reason," she told him, and she won her raise. That was 1972, decades before most shows would take on pay inequality so directly. Perhaps their most famous balancing act was Chuckles Bites the Dust, which aired in 1975. Chuckles the clown dies in a freak parade accident dressed as a peanut. Everyone jokes about it except Mary. But at his funeral, even she breaks into laughter. The minister gently tells her that laughing is okay. That joy is a tribute, too. It was one of TV's most unforgettable moments because it found humor and heartbreak together. That was the Mary Tyler Moore Show at its best. Funny, brave, and real. Forever changing what television could do. One of the most surprising legacies of the Mary Tyler Moore Show was that it created not just one, but 3 hit spin-offs. Rhoda and Phyllis kept the same light comedy feel. Lou Grant, though, was something very different. Instead of making people laugh in a half-hour sitcom, Lou Grant followed Ed Asner's character into a serious 1-hour drama. It started on CBS in 1977 and ran for 5 seasons with 114 episodes. That's an amazing run for a show that switched genres so completely. Lou Grant didn't just hang on, it succeeded in a big way. It earned 99 nominations and won 27 major awards, including 13 Primetime Emmys, 3 Golden Globes, and 3 Directors Guild of America awards. Ed Asner set a record, winning Emmys for the same character in both comedy and drama. He took home 3 Emmys for the Mary Tyler Moore Show and 2 more for Lou Grant. Nancy Marchand, who played his publisher, also won 4 Emmys as supporting actress. Spin-offs rarely reach this level of success, and Lou Grant showed that a single character could work in 2 different worlds. That bold creativity didn't end there. MTM Enterprises shaped American television for years. Many people who learned their craft at MTM went on to make their own hits like Taxi, Cheers, and Frasier. James L. Brooks and Alan Burns left the Mary Tyler Moore Show and shaped Taxi and The Simpsons. Glenn and Les Charles worked at MTM too and created Cheers and Frasier, which went on to win 37 Emmys out of 107 nominations. The MTM style became a way of saying a show was smart and full of real characters. Even when MTM stopped making shows, people still referred to that style as the gold standard. MTM also changed the way television was written and produced. Grant Tinker gave writers real freedom. This was very different from the strict top-down rules of most networks at the time. Writers like Stephen Bocco, Tom Fontana, and James L. Brooks came to MTM because they could do their best work without being held back. The company focused on characters, strong stories, and themes that felt real. That's why they won 80 Emmy Awards overall, with 29 going to The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Even today, successful writers' rooms look a lot like those early MTM teams. MTM's impact went far beyond its own productions. Later shows like Murphy Brown, Designing Women, and The Golden Girls owe a lot to its trailblazing. Diane English created Murphy Brown using the Mary Tyler Moore style as a blueprint. Her show was built around a smart, career-focused woman in a newsroom, and it became a big hit. Designing Women and the Golden Girls also took lessons from MTM. They focused on women, friendships, and strong ensemble casts. Many writers and producers who built these shows were either trained at MTM or learned by studying its work. Networks had seen that audiences liked these kinds of stories and were willing to support them.